So you've got yourself a new steam canner and it's just fresh out of the box and you're thinking, what do I do next? Well, the first thing you need to do is perform a temperature indicator test to calibrate your steam canner. Now, not only should you do this when it's brand new, but also one time a year, you should test it out before you start your canning season to make sure everything's calibrated and it's all working properly. And I'm going to show you how to do it step by step. Now, before you start the temperature indicator test, you'll need to know your altitude because the altitude that you're in will determine what your processing zone is. Let me show you. The knob at the top of your canner has this temperature indicator, and as you can see, it goes by zone. Zone 1 is an altitude of 0 to 3,000 feet. Zone 2 is 3,000 to 6,000 feet, and Zone 3 is 6,000 to 9,000 feet. Your altitude will determine your processing zone. My altitude is Zone 1, so we will be doing this indicator test based on Zone 1, but it's the same no matter what zone that you're in. The test is still the same. To begin, you put your water pan on your stove, and then you place the rack flat side up inside your water pan. Next, you're going to fill your water pan with 2.5 quarts of water. There's 1, 2.5. The water should be level with the top of the jar rack. If you need to add more water to make sure that it's level with the rack, go ahead and add some more water. I've got 4 pint-sized jars filled with water. The canning test asks for 4 quart size, but I don't have any handy at the moment, but it's not going to matter. The jars don't need lids, they just need to be filled with water, and they simulate the contents of your canner in actual use and enable the canner to get up to temperature quicker. Next, I'm going to place the canner lid onto the canner, and I want to make sure that the steam vent hole is toward the back. Next, I'm going to turn my burner on high so I can get the steam canner up to a vigorous boil. If you are testing for zone 2 or 3, then you would be looking for the red indicator to come all the way over to the appropriate green areas based on your altitude and zone. I can tell that the steam canner is starting to heat up because the red indicator is starting to move toward the green area. And you can hear the sound of the water boiling and beginning to build up steam. Another reason why you want the steam valve pointed toward the back is because you can kind of see it in the video, I hope, that steam is starting to release out the back of the canner, and you definitely don't want to get burned. As the temperature is rising, the lid on the steam canner is starting to rock and lift up. See how it's kind of bouncing? You don't want it to do that. So what we need to do is lower the temperature and do it carefully because you don't want that steam to burn you. So I'm going to back it off about that much. I would say that's about medium high. The goal by doing that is to allow the red temperature gauge to continue rising, but not for the lid to rock. We want the lid to remain level and steady. We don't want it to move while the temperature gauge is moving to the appropriate zone. Now the lid is starting to lift again, and I don't want that to happen because what's going to happen is all the steam is going to escape and you won't reach the appropriate temperature or be able to maintain it long enough to safely process the food. So I'm going to back this down some more to about right there. And as you can see, my temperature gauge is about midway into my dark green processing zone. After watching this for a couple of minutes, the lid is no longer rocking, it's staying level. The red indicator is well into my processing zone. And for my stove, this is the heat level that is maintaining this temperature. Now, it's important to note that your zone can vary from just reaching the green area to going far inside of it. And this is because the zones are approximate and your exact altitude will affect maximum positioning of that little red indicator. After a couple of more minutes of maintaining this heat and noting that the lid is no longer rocking, the red indicator has not moved any further into the green area, this lets me know that this is my maximum point. So I'm going to mark it with a red Sharpie. So when I'm processing in the future, I know I'm just waiting for the red indicator to get to that point. Once it reaches that point, then I can begin my processing time. And the processing time, of course, will depend upon what food it is that I'm canning. I also wanted to say that this is kind of an old school steam canner. I've had this for a few years. The newer steam canners have a little slide that once you find your maximum point, you can actually move it to where it needs to be. Mine is just old school, so that's why I have to mark it with a Sharpie. And that is how you perform a temperature indicator test on your steam canner so you can calibrate it based on your altitude. You would do that whether it's brand new out of the box or if you are performing your yearly temperature indicator test. And if you want to know step by step how to use the steam canner when you're processing your food, you can find that video in my Canning 101 playlist, and it's video number 2. But if you have any questions about the temperature indicator test, please feel free to ask them in the comments below. Happy canning, y'all, and may all your lids seal.